me for local board input for this meeting, which takes me now to item 7, extraordinary items. Members, I'd like to take this time to hear a brief COVID and West Auckland flooding update from our Mayor. So I'll just move very quickly that the committee hear a briefing from Mayor Goff on COVID and West Auckland flooding. So I'll just put that up there, Kalinda. I'll just do that quite quickly, that the committee hear a briefing from Mayor Goff on COVID response and West Auckland flooding. Seconded by Councillor Bartley. I'll just make sure everybody can see it, so you know what you're voting on. I think pretty straightforward. All those in favour say aye.
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 To the contrary, no. Declare that carried. Mayor Goff, I will now hand to you for a brief update.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I will keep it brief. Yeah, let's start off with the difficult aspects of COVID. Our MIQ facilities are currently under huge pressure. I mean, not only have we got the 671 cases, some of which will be coming out of that category now, but we've got 300 people who have arrived from Afghanistan, and we've got red flights from Australia. So I think we can expect to see some announcements in the near future from government about expanding that capacity, because without an expansion, we'll be in some difficulty. The other point of difficulty, I guess, yesterday was what they called a bounce around, which was probably a nice way of saying the numbers went back up again to 75. That's a concern. So I guess if we're finished by 1 o'clock today, we'll all be anxiously watching what's happening there. The good news around vaccinations, after harping on for probably 6 months about the need to prioritise Auckland and getting a fairly stony response, we've now got a positive response from government indicating that Auckland is an area of greater risk. We're more vulnerable here for all the reasons that everybody knows, and that either there'll be a reallocation of vaccinations so that we can keep the momentum up in Auckland. There'll be new sources of vaccination, or vaccine, I should say, sourced from overseas, and that will enable us to keep going. At the moment, we're roughly a third or just under a third of all the vaccinations, which is proportionate to our population size. But I'd really like to keep that momentum up, where we're doing, maybe 25,000 vaccinations a day in Auckland. That's fantastic, and we can get through large sections of the population. Just one point, and I think I've asked my head of staff to also contact the local ward councillors on this. There is a big facility at the airport, at the Park and Ride Centre, for drive-through vaccinations. It's not being used to full capacity at the moment. So just get the message out. If people are keen to get a vaccination, that's where they can go to. Now, I hope that doesn't lead to an overwhelming number of people on the site there, but it seems a shame that we have a capacity that's not being fully used. We can do several thousand people a day at that site. Out south, and Councillor Newman had raised with me concerns about Maori and Pacifica vaccinations. The Papakura Marae has opened up as a drive-through, and on its first day did 287. So that, alongside the Manarewa Marae, hopefully will be a culturally comfortable place for people in particularly the Maori community, to get vaccinated, and we need to keep the pressure up on Pacifica vaccinations as well. On testing, the testing stations seem to be under a little less pressure now. We've got the 26 community testing stations, but more people also using GPs and pharmacies, and those numbers are expanding. The boundary restrictions with the Waikato coming into place. We've commandeered part of the North Waikato. Maybe they can leave that in Auckland. It's a more natural fit. But the checkpoints seem to be going quite well. The report I had was only 8 people were turned back yesterday, and it's flowing reasonably, so that's good news. But there are much tighter restraints than last time, and that's for I think, very good reasons. In terms of welfare, obviously, as we've discussed previously, there's some pressure there, but we're keeping a watching brief on that. So if you're aware of particular problems, please let Phil Wilson or Claire Rourke or myself know, and we can follow that through. And currently, we're about to step up to 36 of our staff members making outbound calls, starting with those who are in isolation because of close contacts, and then moving on to elderly isolated people. West Auckland floods, the power is largely back on, which is good news. Many of the roads have reopened, but there are some roads that have been really badly damaged. For our West Auckland councillors, you'll be aware that Bethel's is currently cut off, though I think you can drive along the beach, and it will be a while before we can reconnect that. It's both big landslips and the undermining of the road, and Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi are currently looking at using private land to be able to drive on as well. The water has receded. When I went up to Huapai and Kumeu the other day, it was already on the way down, but it's largely receded, which means that we can get on with the job of assessment. I still don't have clear figures on assessments or insurance claims. I'm hoping to get that later today. For the cleanup, the Waitakere transfer station will be open solely for those people needing to get rid of rubbish as a result of flood damage. And you need to contact the contact centre first to book in that appointment, and that will be done free of charge. Accommodation, we're currently accommodating 4 families, 9 people in toll, all told. That number may come up as it did in the Auckland tornado area. Animal shelter has taken on 2 cats that needed assistance there. There's only been 1 request for food, and the contact centre is not being overwhelmed with calls from people. People are being resilient, self-help and friends and family helping out. But make no, there's no doubt that there's a huge job to be done by people in cleaning up their properties and their commercial premises where there is flooding. There was a bit of commentary somewhere that, was Auckland Council to blame for this? Did we keep our drains clear? I'm a bit astounded by that. When you get 200 mils of rain overnight, wouldn't matter if your drains were 10 metres wide, you would have got that flooding. And I've raised that with Andrew Chin, and he said, look, regardless, there would have been this flooding because this is a 1 in 50-year event. But by and large, people that I talked to when I was up there were reasonably positive about finding a way through, and the community was working pretty well together. So that's it in a thumbnail sketch of what's happening, Mr. Chair. I can take questions if you require, or not if you want to get on with the business.
I think, thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate you being at the helm on this one, and being in the office too, Mr. Mayor, for us all. So I think we'll take some quick questions, I think, before we go and look at the agenda as it is before us. Now, I think I've got a question. First one, I've got a comment from Councillor Sayers. Councillor Sayers, can you just put your question very succinctly, please?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Phil, for your update as well. There's huge efforts going on out in the Kumeu area at the moment, but there is a question that does need to be asked, and the Mayor just touched on it, and Andrew Chin has apparently made a comment around it, but I think we need to get a report back to us, Chris, either through you as Chair or the Mayor directly or the Chief Executive. I'm just asking what was preventable out there. The main reason for that question is, unsubstantiated comments to me that the wastewater systems hadn't been maintained for many years. So I think we just need to get the facts on that. If it's appropriate to do that through you, Chair, or the Mayor, or the Chief Executive, I think it should come back to the councillors. So it's preventable, and there's a learning in this.
Yeah, look, we'll certainly do that, but we won't do that as a priority. The priority will be getting, the first priority was the rescue, and great work done by fire, police, army, and Muriwai Surf Club and Mairangi Bay Surf Lifesavers Clubs. So they were fantastic. Obviously, at the end of that process, we'll look at what might have been done to prevent that. That's just should be part of the standard routine. But I think Andrew Chin is absolutely right. Given the sheer amount of water, and Greg, you've probably seen the Kumeu River and what happened there. It wasn't about stormwater drains. That river just burst its banks and flooded over everything because it couldn't cope with 200 millimeters of water. That's the equivalent of a month and a half winter rain in Kumeu on one night, and that's the obvious reason for it. But we will look at any questions that are raised about stormwater systems and whether any other preventive measures could be put in place or would have helped.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sayers. Councillor Newman, please.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Really encouraging news from you regarding the prioritisation of Auckland for the Pfizer vaccine. Is it your understanding that the most likely option at this stage from government is that they will be able to negotiate for a greater supply imported earlier than what was anticipated? Or is it your expectation that government will have to reallocate from the existing supply in New Zealand and ask DHBs outside of Metro Auckland to change the schedule for vaccinations in those DHBs?
Yeah, well, obviously the former is preferable. And in the discussions I've had with government, they are working really hard to try to find a way of boosting the supply of vaccines. We're fine when we get to October. I think there's 4 million doses coming in October. The real question will be in the last week of September. But I have heard the Minister in charge of COVID-19 saying that if they did have to slow down the rest of the country, they would do that. I've been pretty careful in how I've framed this. If you've heard any of my comments in the media, I've said, look, we're not asking for special treatment because we're Auckland. We're asking for a risk-based approach, just as we determined the making available of the vaccine according, first of all, to if you're a border worker, and then if you had comorbidities, then if you were older. It has to be based on risk. And the overwhelming evidence is that Auckland, because it has the quarantine facilities and it is the gateway city, is at greater risk. And on that basis and that basis alone, priority should be given to maintaining the high level of vaccinations that we're currently getting in Auckland. So if they need to, though, they might slow down the rest of the country. But my hope is that they'll be able to get more vaccines in so we can keep the momentum up everywhere.
Thank you, Mayor. Now I'll go to Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stewart, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Daniel sort of asked part of it, but one of the concerns that I have, and I just wondered if the Mayor can ask the government, can we look at even getting more of the vaccine? In Israel, apparently they've done a lot of studies and the 2 shots are not going to work. They're saying we need to have a 3rd booster shot. And I think after the 3rd booster shot, I think we need to just make sure we've got a supply of vaccines that are coming to New Zealand, because this isn't going away anywhere soon. Yeah,
I've listened to what our epidemiologists have said about this. They say that the jury is still out on the necessity for a booster shot, but if they determine that that is required, they would give that and as a priority to those with comorbidities. With the 4 million doses that I mentioned that are coming in October, that's obviously on top of what we're also getting in September, would have a surplus that would enable us to start doing booster shots should they be required. And I'm sure the government will be on to the fact that if it is determined that that booster shot is necessary, and that may well be the case, then they'd need to get on and making sure that we've got the order in for those extra shots. They are quite keen, I think, to remain with Pfizer rather than using other vaccines, but nobody's ruled out the fact that other vaccines that have been approved, such as the AstraZeneca, might be used. Although there's a degree of caution about some groups that might react with blood clotting to that. Very small, but even a small number, as we saw with one person dying of the COVID from a heart inflammation. It does make big news. So they're trying to stick with the Pfizer to the extent possible.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I'll take two more questions and then we will move into our agenda. Councillor Walker first, and then finally Councillor Henderson.
Have a question around the Kumu River flooding issue, which is part of the larger Kaipara catchment. Have we done the modelling for that catchment to indicate these kind of scenarios? Because if you've got a rainfall event, there's a certain amount of predictability for flooding in that catchment and has been for a long time.
Yeah, well, look, I'm conscious, predictability or otherwise, that this is the second highest level of rainfall in the area since records were first taken, and that at that level of rainfall, all of your normal plans go out the window. But in terms of scenario planning, Wayne, I think that's a question you need to direct to healthy waters. I don't have that specificity of information.
Thank you, Mayor. And finally, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just really quickly, a quick comment to sort of thank colleagues that have reached out to Linda and I. We've really appreciated kind of people getting in touch and checking on us and seeing we're okay and if there's anything we need. Because, yeah, it's been a long few days for us sort of handling the flood response. So thanks, guys. Just a really quick question around the guidance that we can offer to the community around operation of the transfer station. So I'm getting a lot of messages and emails around where can we put the debris, and within a COVID-4 structure, just kind of want to relay something to the community as quick as I can on where they should put their debris and kind of operation of the transfer station. So do we have that level of detail?
Yeah, they're still working on that. On the call that I did at 7:15 this morning with Rachel Kelleher, they're working through the details on that. The details that I can give are the ones that I have already, that the Waitakere transfer station will be available, will open specifically for those people who make calls that have flood damaged property that need to dump material there. There is a question, insurance sometimes covers the cost of that, and the insurance companies may well be providing the skips, etc., to provide that. And I think they were wanting to work with the insurance companies to see if we could work in tandem to help with this aspect of the problem. But I am expecting more information later in the day, Shane. And if Claire Rourke's on the line, I think she is, if she can make a note of that, and we'll get it directly to you. Just to advise you and Linda as well, I am going to try and get out to Piha and to Bethel's on Saturday probably. I can't do it before then. I'm being very careful about when I visit because, unfortunately I can't take a carload of people. I do it in isolation, but generally meet with emergency services when I'm out there. But I'll let you know the details of what I'm trying to do on Saturday when they come through as well. So thanks for that, and thanks to you and Linda for the work that you put in your areas, and Greg, I'm sure you've been doing the same in your patch. It's a pretty tough time when your constituents are faced with that sort of thing, and I will come through with further information as it becomes available to me.
Cool, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that update. Very valuable. Some good information there. It's great to see our organisation, Auckland Council, respond so strongly and quickly. I do acknowledge the councillors from our west there from Councillor Sayers on the northern part of the West to Councillor Henderson and Councillor Cooper for the work that they've been doing as well. And
you, Chris.
all work undertaken under level 4 constraints as well. Not easy, but it's been all hands to the pump, so to speak, out there. The local boards as well. I know we've got local board chair Phelan Perry is also a Fire and Emergency New Zealand member who's been out there right through the night working as well, or nights plural. But there are many other local board members who have been pitching in as best they can. So acknowledge all the elected members, not forgetting our staff who have also, under level 4 constraints, had to undertake this emergency work. So congratulations. I know there's a lot more work to be done out west and in our COVID response as well. Thank you, Mayor, for that briefing. Very valuable. Members, will now proceed to item 8, and I will